Welcome, everybody. First of all, let me thank you all for joining us in this event. Last time we checked, we had more than 400 people registered, including developers, leaders, problem solvers, social innovators, and students from all over the world. So thank you for being here. My name is Oscar Romero. I lead the inclusive innovation efforts of the New York City Mayor's Office of the Chief Technology Officer. Today, together with Stack Overflow, IBM, and the Clinton Global Initiative University, we have a great program for you where we will be discussing global challenges that our cities are facing all over the world. But more importantly, we will be talking about the frameworks that we have designed for you to take action and work with us in addressing some of the most pressing issues of our time. So let's get going. We are living in unprecedented times. The incredibly high transmission rate of COVID-19 has fundamentally changed the structures on which we operate as societies, forcing the world to quickly develop strategies to trace, isolate, contain, and manage the disease. Nonetheless, all of these policies and strategies get to be implemented on very unequal societies with these systemic disparities. So let me give you an example. The United States, which accounts for 30% of the COVID-19 cases identified so far in the world, had an employment rate of about 3.5% in February. Just in April, we lost 20.5 million jobs. That launched the unemployment to about 14.7%. Now, we know that these numbers are not taking into consideration all the folks that had to take down their hours, and certainly not the folks that work in the informal economy. But as we said, these things are not affecting everybody in the same way. We know that if you are a Hispanic or Black American, you're going to be affected by unemployment more than other groups. It has to do with the type of industry that you work on, your ability to actually, whether you belong to a union or not, whether you have insurance or not. And these challenges, even though it may seem like proxies to you when you see these numbers, they're actually very real. They affect the ability of people to put food at the table, to pay the rent at the end of the month. That affects everybody's mental health. And so what all these challenges are bringing up front are exacerbating all the challenges that we already had before. So more importantly, we're not only needing to face the crisis that we're facing right now, but we need to continue to face all the other problems that we have. One of those is climate change. Currently, we are approaching the 1.5 Celsius degree line of no return. This report, published by the IPCC of the United Nations in 2018, basically warned us that if we don't act soon, we're going to reach that 1.5 Celsius degree increase in 2040, and that will displace probably around 275 million people in the following 80 years. So what does that actually look like? Let's think about that for a moment. Here you have a few estimations of all the parts of the world that will be covering water in 2070. You have Alexandria, everything that is in blue is gone. You have Osaka, everything in blue, gone. Shanghai, 17.5 million people, completely gone. Miami is going to be gone as well. So if you think this is not going to affect my city, or this is not going to affect me because I'm not a coastal city, then think about it twice. All the logistics infrastructure networks that we have are actually connected to these ports. Imagine what will it do to your city if suddenly all the goods and services that you receive are disrupted by these changes. If you think about the global infrastructure that connects, that is the backbone of the internet, you have to realize that there are a lot of cables that are connected across the world, and those cables are connected somewhere. And so these challenges are going to affect us in a variety of ways. Now, why cities? Why cities should be addressing these problems? In 2018, about 55% of the world population live in cities, and it is estimated that by 2030, 2050, we're going to have 70% of the population living in cities all over the world. So, as you can see in this map, cities are increasing in the population very fast, and that means that the governments at all levels need to suddenly think about more problems than they ever had to do before. By 2030, we're expecting cities in Latin America, in Southeast Asia, and in Africa to increase dramatically. And so that forces the city governments to think about policies that are inclusive, that can challenge systemic disparities, that are actually looking at global challenges and not only in the administration of the particular jurisdiction that they represent. Now, these problems are increasingly more complex, and it has to do not only with the population that you have to deal with, but also with the actual groups of people that belong to that population. Some cities like New York have about 37% of the population being foreign-born. That means that governments need to respond in a variety of languages, in a variety of culturally appropriate manners. And so that increases the challenge and the need for us to all be connected as we try to address these problems. And so that gets us to you. If you join this webinar, it's probably because you want to leverage technology to address some of these global challenges. And so today we wanted to share with you a couple of frameworks on how to think about technology in the context of these global challenges. One of them is to be critical about the way you see technology. Technology is not neutral. Every time infrastructure gets to be deployed in one place, it doesn't get deployed in another, and that generates geographies of haves and have-nots. When you think about your solutions, think about tech-enabled versus tech-centric. It's not about the new gadget that you have to address a particular thing. It's about the system in which this tool or this solution gets to be embedded. Think about human-centered design. Don't design for your company or for what your aspirations of the software or tool is, but for the problem that you're trying to solve and for the people that you're trying to serve. And finally, think about outcomes. Think about whether the connectivity that you're providing in a particular way is actually generating the change that you want to see in the groups that you're hoping to serve. The other framework is that of collective impact. You're not alone. As I mentioned, all these challenges are challenges that all cities need to figure out together. And we are here to leverage each other's resources. So in the following slides, we're going to be presenting to you 4 different global frameworks for you to address these problems. Think about international cooperation as an opportunity that you can leverage. All the other governments do not need to be seen as that final client that you're going to have when you fully develop your startup. We can be your partners in the process of developing your products. Think about foundations as approachable and not those places where you only go when you already know or have a big name. And finally, think about the private sector not as competitors, but as supporters in your journey. So with that being said, I would like to pass it on to IBM and the CGI U folks to continue to present to you the opportunities that we have for you today.
Thank you, Oscar. I would like to give a warm welcome from Team IBM to everybody around the world with us today. Being from New York, I take very much pride in this event and look forward to helping local New Yorkers. My name is Bruce Weed. I'm the Program Director of Call for Code Ecosystem Business Development and Project Mentoring. I would also like to take this time to introduce Sarah Starelli, IBM Program Director of Call for Code Ecosystem Marketing and NGO Partnerships. And finally, I would like to introduce Elisa Trometer of the Clinton Foundation, Deputy Director of External Affairs. But before I hand it over to Sarah, I just wanted to say, live from New York, it's your Tech for Good seminar series. Sarah, over to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Bruce. And hi, everyone. We really appreciate you joining in from around the world today. So this year we have some exciting news to say that Call for Code 2020 is specifically focused on COVID-19 and climate change. So we're really calling on all of you, from developers, problem solvers, students, innovators around the world, to take part and join with us in helping solve these pressing global challenges. So 2020 is actually not new for Call for Code. We actually had launched this in 2018 with the creator, David Clark Cause, in addition to our charitable partner, UN Human Rights. As you can see here, we have an extensive ecosystem ranging from over 200,000 participants from over the past 2 years, in addition to 165 nations, over 8,000 applications built. So really engaging more than 24 million developers and many folks like yourselves to really rally behind these important initiatives that are imminent as we're all experiencing right now, and they're no longer going away. And so we really would like to call on you to focus on these specific areas with us this year. So as you can see here, climate change, we're really focusing and doubling down on water sustainability, energy sustainability, as well as disaster resiliency. And then in addition to COVID-19, we really would like you to focus on crisis communication, remote education, in addition to community cooperation. And before we hand it off to Bruce a little bit later, he will be providing more resources and details about how you can get involved and really the gateway to help access and get you started. And finally here, I'd like to tell you a little bit about our timeline. So our submissions are actually closing on July 31st. As you can see here, we had launched in February. We actually decided to have an initial round of COVID-19 solutions due to the imminence that we saw around the world of folks really needing technology and to help get that in the hands of users and developers to help make a difference in the communities that really need it most. And so on May 5th, we actually announced our top 3 solutions, which Bruce will go into a little bit more detail about later. But as you can see here, they're called SafeQ, Are You Well, and COVID Impact. So we're really looking forward to partnering with many of our ecosystem members and helping get this technology out to the everyday users such as yourselves. Then as you can see here, as a friendly reminder, once again, submissions close July 31st, and our global prize winner will be announced in October. So please stay tuned and join us in this exciting effort. And for now, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Elisa over at the Clinton Foundation, who's one of our specific partners that we have in our ecosystem. So take it away, Elisa.
Many thanks, Sarah and Bruce, and hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be joining you all for today's event. My name is Elisa Trameter, and I currently serve as Deputy Director of External Affairs for the Clinton Global Initiative University, or CGI U for short, which is an initiative of the Clinton Foundation. Since 2007, the CGI U team has worked hard year-round to empower and support the next generation of leaders around the world, challenging them to make commitments to action or social impact projects that address pressing global issues. As part of CGIU's external affairs strategy, we host a variety of community engagement events, both in person and virtually, for our current students and program alums. It's of over 10,000 strong. Since 2015, CGIU has hosted impact-driven codeathons for college students of all academic backgrounds to develop tech solutions to pressing global challenges. And in 2020, we have partnered with IBM on their Call for Code Global Challenge University Edition to take on both COVID-19 and climate change. Together, we will continue to host a plethora of virtual offerings throughout this year, open to all students, undergrad or grad, worldwide. CGIU's calendar of events assists us in achieving our overall mission, but we complement our community engagement experience by providing all accepted students with access to a robust virtual curriculum focused on social entrepreneurship. We ensure each student is paired with a CGIU alumni mentor who assists in guiding the student through the program and in implementing their commitment to action. Our team connects students with program experts who work on our Clinton Climate Initiative, the Clinton Health Matters Initiative, and our Clinton Development Initiative. And we also provide access to a number of early stage seed funding opportunities. Most immediately, our COVID-19 Student Action Fund, which launched in mid-April, aims to identify and support select students at universities around the world who are committed to addressing the COVID-19 pandemic. This action fund will provide at least $100,000 in total funding to students, with each grant awarded ranging from $2,000 to $5,000. You can apply for the COVID-19 Action Fund by June 3rd, and you can also learn more about how to apply for CGIU and learn more about the Clinton Foundation by visiting cgiu.org. Thank you so much for your time, and we really cannot wait to hear about all of the ideas you formulated. Back to you, Bruce.
Thank you very much. What I want to do now is take you through a little bit more detail about the 2 pivotal issues that we're trying to address in our Call for Code Global Challenge this year. Obviously, COVID-19 is a big concern for everybody on the health side, but we also have pressing issues on the climate side as well. So when we start out looking at COVID-19, there's 3 areas that we wanted to focus on: crisis communication, remote education, and community cooperation. The reason these are important is local developers around the world can actually work and fix these problems. So starting with crisis communication, we obviously understand the need for accurate information to be disseminated amongst everyone through their smart devices. We also understand the need for the education, whether it's college students, high school students, or in the professional realm, like we're doing today, being able to communicate remotely. And then last but not least, community cooperation. It's important during these difficult times that we're able to manage our supply chains and really work together to be successful as local communities and as nations. When we look at the technology that's leveraged in these different arenas, starting with crisis communication, obvious ones are chatbots. Chatbots are great for doing standard types of information that people may be looking for, right? Canned information that can be answered in a couple of sentences. We also leverage SMS technology, which obviously people are familiar with their smartphone. And then we also look at remote education in terms of things like this, virtual classrooms, digital courses, using technologies like Zoom and Skype and Teams as just a couple of examples. And then on the community cooperation side, as I mentioned before, that supply chain management really is the critical thing, as we've all seen this out there trying to get to stores, whether it's getting milk or eggs or other supplies that are in short and tight demand right now. So what are some good examples? We did announce at Think conference this year on May 5th, 3 of the first entries around the COVID-19 solutions. The first one, called SafeQ, allows you to social distance in a really safe way, i.e. in your car. So rather than get in line and wait outside a box store or a supermarket, you're able to do that in your car virtually. And when it's your turn to go in, you can actually go into the store. Are You Well is another solution that was submitted. This one actually looks at patient symptoms to figure out, is there a possibility that they do have COVID-19? And if so, how can they do things to aid themselves in that process? And then the last one is the COVID impact, which really is taking a hard look at small businesses and what can they do to help aid these businesses, whether it's from obtaining grant money, government funding, things of this nature, and assisting them through AI technologies. When we look at climate change, we have 3 key areas: water sustainability, energy sustainability, and disaster resilience. The water sustainability, it's really become a critical issue, having clean drinking water. This affects all parts around the world, whether it's droughts or whether it's in cities that just don't have the clean water they need. And then we have the energy sustainability. We've actually seen the greenhouse gases go down by 17% recently because of COVID. Less people are driving, less people are going into office buildings and factories. So it'll be interesting to see what solutions and evolutions come out of this knowledge that we've gained. And then last but not least, disasters. Disasters have gone up dramatically, and not in terms of just the numbers, but the impact. And these are things that we need to address as soon as possible. So what are some of the technologies in these areas? Well, certainly in water sustainability, it comes down to really data science, right? It's collecting information on the quantity and quality of the water, storing that, analyzing it, and disseminating that information. For energy sustainability, it's leveraging technologies like IoT, think smarter cities, leveraging AI, having lights go off in city areas, maybe after midnight, coming back on at the appropriate time the next evening. And then disaster resilience, it's really trying to improve preparedness before a disaster, and then during a disaster, how can we help people? And then post a disaster, are there additional things we can aid? When we look at our winners from previous years, the Call for Code, which started in 2018, the winner was Project OWL. This is one of the projects I got to mentor from the beginning, and they created a mesh network that allows communications between affected natural disaster victims and first responders. So think of police, fire, emergency medical folks. And what it does is it collects information of what people need, and then it routes that information to a dashboard that shows the various agencies that need to respond to these particular requests. In 2019, we had Prometeo who won, and they provided a solution to help firefighters. As firefighters in wildfires go out, they're typically not wearing oxygen tanks like you would with a house fire, and so therefore they're breathing in toxic fumes. They're submitting their body to smoke and heat and other things. So we're able to track that information with sensors that the firefighter wears on their body, and that gets funneled to a representative that will analyze that and figure out when is it time to pull that firefighter out and put somebody else in their place to ensure their health and well-being. Two others that are important to note, we have Build to Change. They were a runner-up. They actually provide some interesting solution where they go in and look at buildings after particularly earthquakes, but it could also be hurricanes and other natural disasters, and figure out using Watson virtual recognition, visual recognition, whether or not the building is going to be able to be reconstructed or will need to be completely torn down. And then we have our Call for Code Puerto Rico hackathon winner, Pedro, who came up with Drone Aid, and that's actually using drone technology to do visual recognition to figure out where are communities that need particular entities or things. You've probably seen sometimes communities will write things on top of houses or buildings like need water, need medical assistance, or put signs out. And then some things are obviously obvious through visual recognition. So when you look to go do this, now that you're starting to get excited and say, hey, this is great, we want to go form a team, we want to join Call for Code, how do we go about doing this? Well, a couple of tips. Number one, the team allotment is up to 5 people. I would recommend minimum 2 to 3 because you're going to need diverse set of skills, people that can wear many different hats. You want to make sure that you team with people that are committed to this. You will spend a lot of hours doing this work, and you want to make sure that you have that equal commitment. And then, of course, the diversity is not just from a standpoint of skill sets like strategy and marketing and technical, but also making sure that both men and women are represented, different races, religions, people from around the world. And this is what's great about this whole digital environment. You can actually partner with people across the globe, and we have many examples of that and teams that have been formed. It's a great experience regardless of whether you win or not. A lot of groups have gone off to try to do startups after this, so I'd highly recommend engaging in this. Very quickly on some of the criteria for getting a winning solution, the one that's most important is understanding the problem. So you really want to look at the users involved, spend time there. Don't reinvent the wheel. Make sure you document your source code. And then this is another one important, number 4, create a powerful video. The judges will look at your video along with your code that you put in GitHub, but that video is important in communicating the idea behind what your actual solution does and how it could be implemented. And then double check, obviously, permissions. From a judging perspective, it's fairly obvious, right? Things that would be looked at: completeness. Is this transferable? Can you deploy it in the field? Are the people that are going to use this able to use it? Meaning, is it designed and have usability features that make it easy to work with? Is it effective and efficient? And then, of course, obviously, creativity and innovation is always key. So how can we actually help you get started here? So I just want to touch on very quickly some thought processes to look at. Approaches some sort of a design thinking side of it, and these are the key areas, right? Really emphasize with your users, define what it is the user needs, then ideate those ideas, prototype, and then test it out. But more specifically, you will need to figure out which area you want to get involved in, either COVID-19 or climate change. Look at some subtopical areas there. Maybe with COVID-19, you decide on community cooperation. Maybe in the climate change, you really want to focus on mental health issues after a natural disaster. And then you need to figure out where in the cycle you're going to be coming in. Depending on what you're dealing with, it could be in prevention, potentially mitigation of a particular natural disaster, response, or recovery. So you need to understand from a timing perspective where you fit in. And then finally, you're going to whiteboard all this and go through the basic flow before you even start to code your solution. So Dirk's going to talk a little bit more about in depth what the starter kits is, but in principle, the starter kits were designed to help you get going. They define the problem statement around these problem areas I outlined in climate change and for COVID-19. It'll go into the use case in more detail. There's architectural diagrams, there's some basic code to get started, data sets, and other documentation. So highly recommend you start there to get your lay of the land. And then last but not least, I wanted to cover the top technologies that we leverage here and what we're looking at for you guys to take advantage of. Obviously, fundamental with most applications is some type of data management and analytics. You need to store information, analyze it. A lot of the information that's being utilized is coming from sensor data. So IoT is obviously very pivotal, particularly in the climate change arena. You've got AI, very important, right, to leverage the latest technology, machine learning. All of this will be done on the cloud through cloud services. And then container technology is important in terms of having that portability. So please don't miss out on working with Red Hat OpenShift. And last but not least, blockchain. If you're getting into areas of supply chain management, it's a great way to integrate that into your solution as well. So without further ado, I would like to pass it on, to Shanna, and she is going to take you through some of the issues that the New York City CTO's office is grappling with in a deeper dive. Thank you.
All right, thanks so much, Bruce. My name is Shanna Crumley, and I'm an innovation advisor at the New York City Mayor's Office of the CTO, the Chief Technology Officer. As my colleague Oscar mentioned earlier, and as we've been talking about all this whole time, we're talking about broad global issues that have clear local impacts on communities and cities, especially cities like ours. Our collabs programs I'm going to talk about, our collabs challenges, are one of the ways that the city is working at this community level. One of our jobs here at the New York City CTO's office is to keep an ear to the ground and really listen to understand what New Yorkers are dealing with. So how can we make tech work for New Yorkers rather than the other way around? And at the same time, we're also trying to stay plugged in consistently to the global community of doers, thinkers, inventors, bright minds like you, the audience of this webinar, to help us be bold and help us solve these problems on a local level. This CoLabs program is a set of neighborhood-based partnerships between government agencies, local community organizations and residents, and private sector partners to go in and identify community priorities, and then with problem solvers like you, to pilot tech-enabled solutions. Again, tech-enabled, we mean tech-enabled because tech is just one tool in the very large puzzle of what it's like to really solve a problem at a community level. This model of working with communities to solve the problems has the potential, we think, to really scale to other neighborhoods across New York City, to other cities, and other countries around the world. We see this as a foundation for how to engage in global issues at a local level. The city is really our laboratory in a way to test solutions and find solutions that really work for residents, not just like plug and play or generic tech tools that don't quite fit the needs on the ground. We are not in the solution plugging business. We are very much in the problem solving business and asking tough questions and really trying to drive towards solutions. Bruce just went through the design thinking process, and that's also the foundation for our work, a human-centered design process of going in, community engagement, asking questions, and trying to really understand the problem, and then based on that knowledge, be able to make more effective decisions and solutions. Like Bruce mentioned earlier, this is the first step. So our first step is to co-identify challenges that the community is facing that could be addressed with new ideas or technologies, that could be addressed with some pilots of tech-enabled solutions like these. The basis of this community engagement methodology is to build a relationship first with local leaders, with community organizations, community-based organizations, entrepreneurs, activists, educators, residents there in the community to identify challenges. So we get together a community tech board, we call it, and go through workshops and really try to dig into these issues. The second step is then to co-design an innovation challenge, like these two that I'm going to talk about now, to identify potential solutions to those specific challenges. So then we open a call to entrepreneurs, startups, companies that are actively addressing these issues, and ask for help, for solutions. And then finally is co-creating. Once we identify some solutions that could be great fits for this particular challenge, then we pilot together. And this is when the challenge truly becomes a partnership between the city agencies, community partners, entrepreneurs, and residents to test these solutions and learn together. So let's dig into the collabs we're working on right now. So for our current challenges, let me click over. Okay. For our current challenges, we're focused on accessible mental health and housing rights in NYC. So these are the issues that when we talk to the community in Inwood and Washington Heights specifically, that's the northern little house on this map, they said specifically, accessible mental health is something we really want to dig into, and housing rights is a huge concern for us. So on the mental health side, we know nationally, actually, I think this statistic is actually global. 1 in 2 mental health conditions starts at age 14, which is very young and often does not then get addressed, which compounds the effects. So it's something that is starting very, very young. And in this community in Inwood, Washington Heights is 74% Latin American or Hispanic. And so Latinx girls in particular there in their neighborhood are reflecting the rates nationally, the highest rates of suicide and ideation attempts. We're seeing that in our own neighborhoods here as well. So Latinx girls in particular is a population that this community said we want to really focus on them first and really find a way to meet them where they're at. And then finally, Inwood is a mental health care shortage area, which is a national designation for an area that doesn't have enough access to resources through the hospital system, through mental health organizations. It's somehow disconnected from the system that we're trying to build around mental health. So there's a concern there as well. And then on the housing rights side, this really came up in the context of tenant harassment and tenant abuse. So one side of that is that half of all Inwood apartments and households are rent burdened, meaning that they spend more than half of their income on rent. And that was before COVID-19. And then the other side of this is that people living in these apartments, the landlords are trying to find ways to force people out so that they can raise rents, so that they can follow the gentrification trends in this neighborhood. And it's really it's becoming a force of trying to push people out of their homes that they've been there for generations. One of the ways that they do this is that we see this happen is through maintenance issues, where they just pile up and the landlords or the building owners don't meet those needs, don't address them, and they pile up. So 15% of the households have 3 or more, and we're talking leaky ceilings, heat that doesn't work in the winter, rodent problems. There's a whole bunch of ways that the system can break down. So these are 2 issues that the community brought up. Now, in the context of COVID-19, obviously these have been exacerbated. We talked to our partners, our community partners, and they said that these issues were there before. We've seen these problems, but they've been just completely brought into focus and exacerbated with COVID-19. And we're not done with COVID-19. So it's something that everyone is very focused on. One of these issues that's been increased is the stressors, obviously. So there was a poll of Latinx Americans across the country that reported major effects on their mental health due to COVID-19 and high psychological distress. This is stressful for everyone, and it's especially stressful for anyone that's struggling with housing insecurity, food insecurity, job insecurity. It's just exacerbating issues. And we know that the hardest hit communities are communities of color that have been disproportionately devastated across the country, and we see this very much here in New York City. And this disparate effect is then also creating impacts on mental health and access to treatment. So the stressors are building up, and the lack of access is very exacerbated in these communities specifically. And then long-term impacts. So Thrive NYC is our partner for the Mental Health Challenge. They're a city initiative, and they've predicted increased rates of depression, grief, trauma, anxiety, and these are all especially going to be a huge concern in long term for this Latinx population, this Latinx youth population. And so again, this is across the board an extremely traumatizing and stressful event worldwide. And I think that we see that it's just an example. It's just a very clear example on a very specific group of people that there's so much potential to increase access right now and improve resources right now to see those long-term impacts be a little bit less strong. On the housing side, we talked to our partners there as well. There's the Department of Housing Preservation and Development and the Mayor's Office to Protect Tenants. And they also said that this COVID-19 crisis has just exacerbated long existing problems. So one thing is lost income, because so many people suddenly lost their jobs just seemingly overnight in the last few months. Tenants in this neighborhood were already struggling to pay for basic needs. That was already a big concern for the community, and now rent burden has just become much more, just impossible at this point. So people are facing lost income. They're facing fears of eviction. We have an eviction moratorium that will be expiring in August, which is just kind of compounding and pushing some of these issues to a point in August. And we've heard that there's a lot of fear in the community around that. And then just general accessing services, that it was already, very difficult to make sure that there were ways to navigate the system for social services, food assistance, and unemployment, but we've seen that the unemployment, all of these systems have been even more difficult to access now that everything is remote, everything is locked down. So, and again, that's just a perfect example of an opportunity to come in with new, creative, out of the box, something new that can address these issues. This is the website that you can hopefully visit soon for the Accessible Mental Health Challenge. Here on the website, you'll find more information on how the challenge process works, more background and context on the neighborhood and the issues I've just mentioned, and then what we're looking for, selection criteria, what the judging process will be like, and some FAQs for how the timeline will be. For the Accessible Mental Health Challenge, the question we're posing to you and to applicants is, how might we improve mental health among Latinx youth in Inwood, Washington Heights? And that is intentionally very broad because there are so many components of this, and there is more information on the website, but there are so many pieces of this that could be solved to improve the overall puzzle. We are looking for perhaps ways to improve mental health and resilience. Those were two issues that came up, or create culturally relevant content. We know that teenagers is a distinctive culture, but then also how can we make tools that are adapted to this particular, to Latinx girls, to Latinx youth, to teenagers in New York. It's a different context than what some of the current mental health tools are focused on. It could also reduce stigmas or increase the comfort to seek help. We know that there's a lot of stigma around talking about mental health, around acknowledging it and addressing it, and then how to seek help and where to seek help. So things that could improve that process, improve that comfort could be great. And we leave it there. It is, again, intentionally very open-ended because we're looking for you to bring in your expertise. We don't have the answers. We're looking to partner with experts. And we're looking to you to bring in your subject matter knowledge and your technical tools to the table to solve these issues in a creative way. And on the housing side, similarly, you can find all of the information here on the website. And the question that we're posing here is, how might we support the provision of more strategic, targeted, and tailored information to tenants about their housing rights, enabling them to take action? So there's two parts here. One is an education piece, an awareness, kind of helping tenants understand what the laws are. So there's been some new laws passed, how that applies to them, what their rights are, what the resources are, and then also actionable items. How can we make this actionable and help tenants actually go through the process of claiming their rights, or becoming more empowered to understand and take action or stand up or address these issues head on. Again, we try to leave it as open as possible. Those are two very big and broad categories. Some possible ideas could be increasing that understanding of rights and how to claim the rights. It could also be supporting advocacy and outreach, so working directly with our community-based organizations that are already doing this on the ground, but improving those processes, or building them up, making them more impactful. Or it could be creating interactive, engaging, and culturally competent tools, again, so making it easier to understand and go through those processes. Maybe bringing some of the application process into the 21st century wouldn't be terrible. Again, this is intentionally open-ended because this is really about a partnership between subject matter experts, local residents with very deep community knowledge, and then you guys, our tech innovators, hopefully. So some specifics on these challenges. The deadline for both of these has been extended now to July 15, which will give us the time to pull in some great applications and put them in the context of COVID-19. And then we'll be hoping to pilot then in the late fall. We'll have info sessions for each of these on June 16 and June 17, and I'm going to pull up these QR codes now. So these QR codes go to the websites, and you can dig right in and submit your application today or while I'm talking. So those info sessions will be in June, and we'll be answering questions there as well. So stay tuned to the website. We'll put up those links in the next few weeks, and we hope to see you there. Please apply. Again, so thank you so much for joining us on this webinar. We are so glad to be plugged into this community, to be able to interact with you guys, with these folks from CGI U and Stack Overflow and IBM, all about tech for good. We are all about that. So we are looking forward to hearing from you, because we need you to help us be bold and creative and smart, and help us solve these global issues here on the New York level and the local problem solving level. So we look forward to hearing from you and reading your applications. I will now hand it over to Derek from IBM.
Hi, Shanna. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your introduction and everything. So, hi, Shanna, thank you very much. I appreciate everything that you presented here before. Great information. I'm going to go over a couple things here to talk about the starter kits and kind of give a little bit more information about that. So just as a quick background, my name is Derek TA. I'm the lead developer advocate for Call for Code and Code and Response. And I love what I do. I get to work with not only the Call for Code competition that we're going to talk about today to give you some resources to participate in that, but I'm also fortunate enough to work on the implementation of things through our Code and Response program as well. So Bruce already talked about Project Owl and Prometeo. I've been very fortunate to be able to work with those teams and kind of bring their great ideas that came out of Call for Code to life. So it's really fantastic. So let me kind of go over and show some of the things here, these starter kits that we have for both Call for Code for the competition, as well as we'll talk about the two specific tracks we have going on this year with COVID-19, as well as our focus on climate change. Someone will drop a link in the chat here, but developer.ibm.com/call-for-code is where you want to go to get started. You'll see here there's a page with a ton of resources that kind of talks about what the challenge is, what we're doing this year tackling COVID-19. It was in addition to Call for Code because we wanted to have something that obviously this pandemic randomly came about, right? And we wanted to take what we do with Tech for Good and what we do with coming up with solutions for hard problems and expand Call for Code to tackle COVID-19, as well as our focus this year on climate change. Both equally important issues here, of course, both things that we are looking to have you guys participate in helping try to solve. So again, developer.ibm.com/call-for-code. Let's take a look at the starter kits for COVID-19. This will take you to a place here where it talks about some of the ideas that we've brought in as early ideas that we're going to implement with our Code and Response program. You're welcome to read these three solutions. They're really, really ingenious solutions that kind of do help tackle the COVID-19 problem. They competed in this a little earlier. I'm just going to switch back to this page here. Was it in here? Sorry, wrong page. There is a timeline here, of course, now the live demo, can't find it. But they participated in the early part of the early implementation for COVID-19. So these are three solutions I encourage you to read more about to kind of see what they had. They're unique. Each of them are unique, and they're pretty cool ideas. But with these starter kits, so if you want to get started working with something with COVID-19, there's three different areas that we kind of went through when we created these starter kits. So they're kind of just a basis for you to get started with technology on IBM Cloud and to give you a starting point of ideas on places that you can kind of go. The first one that we had was the one focused on crisis communication. This was built by some of my colleagues that, they wanted to take the idea of a chatbot and kind of work through that and see what they could do with that, building a chatbot for a crisis situation. And you'll see that all of these starter kits will have an architectural diagram with annotated steps that will show you step by step, here's how this flows. So if you want to create something, you can easily go through and understand where the starter kit started and how to work with it. This one had a couple of ideas. So we talked about in here, you'll see creating a chatbot on a website. There's also a way to integrate a chatbot with Slack and another architecture on using a COVID-19 crisis communication chatbot that's voice enabled with Node-RED. Node-RED's a really cool technology in and of itself. So if you're unfamiliar with Node-RED, I would encourage you to check that out. It's a flow-based programming editor. It's really, really good for quick implementation of things, for prototypes, and even for robust solutions that you would use in production. But all of these here are, again, annotated for easy understanding, even the tutorials to do these things. So if you're really interested in creating a chatbot centered around COVID and, you want to know how to set this up, you can follow the tutorial here. It kind of outlines exactly what you're going to do, how you do it, what you'll learn, how to sign up for a cloud account if you don't have one. And again, these are step-by-step fantastic instructions on how to do these things. And you'll find that, the links in here will take you to either our technical documents, or it'll take you to a full GitHub solution. Everything here that we have is open source. And we believe that that's a really great way to connect people and to make sure that everyone has all the information they can have about a solution. Open source is definitely the way to go. So I'm just going to scroll all the way down here. I believe down here at the bottom, you'll see so you can see more steps for this particular solution if you are interested in integrating it with Slack. Again, these are full tutorials and full solutions for you to kind of get started with it. We also have a track for remote education, which remote education is tackling the issue with, how can we educate students and other people during the COVID-19 crisis? Everything has shifted. We've had quite a difference in how people can learn. This was one that I worked on particularly with a couple people. We have an option here for, if you want to get started with a quiz application, very simple quiz application. It works with Loopback, another really cool technology. If you're unfamiliar with it, check out Loopback. As well as a speech-to-text app that processes videos. So if you have teachers that already have video instructions for student learning, some people don't necessarily learn the best through video. Some people prefer, hands-on, or some people might want to read. So this would allow teachers to take that video and use Watson speech-to-text to give out text instructions to students, and also even to be able to translate it into another language, which is something that might be helpful if you have a diverse set of students. Same thing here. I'm not going to go through this just like the other one for the sake of time, but you'll have full tutorials here you're able to capitalize on as well. Additionally, in the COVID-19 starter kit, we have a thing on community cooperation as well, which, how can communities best work together when pandemics or other natural disasters strike? What can we do about that? And I think that that's, a really important topic, of course, which is why we have a starter kit for you. Same idea here. You'll find the architecture as well as how to create a mobile app to facilitate community collaboration, all the technologies that we use. And additionally, all of these have, documents and all kinds of resources and things for you to look at as well. The other half of the challenge, like I mentioned before, was climate change. So if you are more interested in coming up with a solution centered around climate change, again, developer.ibm.com/call-for-code. You can click Get Started and look at the starter kits for climate change. There's 3 areas here as well: water sustainability, energy sustainability, as well as disaster resiliency. These are the same high-quality starter kits that we put out for COVID-19 as well. All kinds of information and resources on, if you want to build a weather dashboard or analyze sensor data, if you want to work with data from, ESP32s or ESP8266s to get environmental data. You could look at soil content or moisture analysis, all kinds of things there worth looking at here as well. Again, full solutions. You kind of get a background on who helped create these. The architecture, all the code, everything is in here for you to build upon. Energy sustainability, again, if you want to look at what you can do to help make energy more sustainable or providing clean and efficient energy, this is also a solution in here for you as well to get you started. And last but not least, the disaster resiliency starter kit. We see a lot of natural disasters that just that's why they're natural disasters. They can't necessarily be stopped, but we can do things to mitigate and somewhat prevent things that happen afterwards. So definitely something I would encourage you to take a look at. All of these resources are here for you. You're able to connect with us also in Slack if you are interested in getting some IBM help or guidance. We're happy to help you there as well. So developer.ibm.com/call-for-code. Check that out. And if you have any questions, please feel free to find us. And we want to help you build your solution for Call for Code. And we look forward to the things that you create. I'm going to pass this over to Teresa from Stack Overflow. So Teresa, turn it over to you.
Thanks so much, Derek, for the handoff. I'm going to put my slides up so you can see them. As Derek mentioned, my name is Teresa Dietrich, and I am the CTO and CPO of Stack Overflow. And I've been in the tech industry for over 20 years, starting at AOL back in the 90s. So I've spent my career building, imagining, and operating great products for businesses and consumers. And I'm so excited to be here with you today because there's nothing I love more than imagining new products and getting started on them. So I want to give you some tips and advice on how to work remotely. Stack Overflow. Okay, I'm told I'm not sharing my screen. Let me try this again for you guys. Wanted to start with some tips and tricks on collaboration. As I mentioned, Stack Overflow, before the pandemic hit, the company was 40% remote, and the product and engineering and technology teams were 80% remote. So wanted to give you some advice on the work that you're going to be doing and how to do that. I think start with your collaborations stack early. Try and keep it simple. Integrate the tools where you can to create a better workflow. Make sure all of your team is onboarded onto each of these tools and set expectations across the team for how you plan to use the tool so that everybody knows who you're using what for. Collaboration tools have gotten more complex these days, and so people may use tools for different means and other experiences that they had. Proactively schedule team check-ins. You could use an agile methodology, or you could come up with your own version. For each check-in, set expectations about what the goals of that check-in is, and make sure anyone who has pre-work before that session knows what they need to do, so you can make sure that all.
Hello, welcome back, everybody. Can everybody hear me clearly? Good. So what I wanted to do here, in light of the technical difficulties we had with Teresa, we will be, as an informational announcement, we will be packaging up all the pertinent information, the slides you've seen here, including Teresa's, so you will be able to look through her presentation in more detail along with the rest of the materials. But I did want to cover some key links. So obviously, when you get the presentation, you'll see these are all hot links. If you kind of run your mouse over, you'll see, like with participants, you can actually click to the call for code challenge. You can see who the sponsors are. If by chance you're calling in from an enterprise corporation today as a developer, you can participate in call for code and form a team, but you can also sponsor as a company. So you can look to that link. We do have reference materials and things to look at as well, specifically around COVID-19. Dirk took you through some of those materials, so I would encourage you to look at those. I also posted those links out on the YouTube video stream. We also have a Call for Code University track, so if you happen to be a student, please take advantage of that. There's an opportunity to win in that particular arena. And then I've posted in here my LinkedIn ID if you want to reach out to me through LinkedIn, if you have other questions or more details you want to walk through. But basically, the process is fairly simple, right? It's get registered, start to develop your solution, start to work with the open technology, because again, a lot of this will be placed out on open source as part of the call for code. That's part of the commitment that at least a portion of your solution is placed into open source. You can see this with both Project Owl and Prometeo. If you're interested, it's under the Linux Foundation. You can also find people to partner up with through the Slack ID here, and I posted this on the YouTube stream as well. So if you click on that, you can join the Call for Code external Slack channel and start to figure out other people you want to partner with, and then obviously submit your idea and move forward. So just some key links in here to help you get started. And again, we will be providing all the presentation materials moving forward, so you will have those. Again, we apologize for the slight technical difficulties today, but again, we really wanted to do this event live, and we felt it was important. And so now what I'd like to do is hand it over to Sarah, who's going to wrap up here for us. Thank you.
Field with IBM, as well as a variety of our ecosystem members. And then we also, as Bruce mentioned, we do have our university edition as well, and that's actually a $10,000 prize and the opportunity to interview with IBM. So why not join us really as we help combat climate change, in addition to COVID-19. And with that, we'll go ahead and actually move over into a Q&A. So I want to bring back Oscar. I wanted to specifically ask you two questions. So one is from Melissa from Richmond, Virginia. She specifically would like to know, how could technology be more accessible to those who do not have access or don't have technology skills?
Right. So, I mean, one of the key challenges that we have is the digital divide, right? And it is and this divide is not one, but many. It is about the infrastructure and who has access to the infrastructure. It's about your ability to actually pay for the services that you have once they are actually available in wherever that you see that you live at. Then it has to do with digital skills, your ability to actually use the software and tools, and whether you actually own those devices as well. So the divides are multiple, and I think one of the jobs that the City of New York is been working on very, very hard is the digital inclusion strategy, to actually be able to provide people with all the things that we discussed before. So there's no just fixes. There's a lot of training that needs to happen in targeted populations. There's a lot of infrastructure development. That means like literally either designing creative ideas on how to provide broadband services to folks, but also it is about making sure that the cables and the infrastructure are where they need to be. And then it is also about the devices. People need to get devices, and so the role of government has been very creative in how we distribute those, how we make them available, whether in these particular conditions, for instance, to the point of actually delivering devices to vulnerable populations across the city. So that's kind of like the broad scope. And I will encourage anybody that thinks about the digital divide to not think about one piece of the cake, but rather to think about the whole series of policies that needs to be in place so that we can make technology more accessible in its broader sense to people.
Great, thanks. And another question we actually have from Patrick from Ghana. So in our true global effort here, he'd like to know how much attention must be given to technology to enhance service delivery during and after COVID-19, looking at the lack of connectivity happening in our cities, not only to mention rural areas as well.
So that's a very good question. I mean, both questions are amazing, by the way. I think the important thing here is to not actually put that much attention on technology itself, but rather put attention on the problems that you're trying to solve, and then identifying what are the ways in which institutions are really looking at solving at those problems. For instance, there's a really interesting example that I like. It was a project called SMS for Life in Tanzania that was designed to identify to support local clinicians to provide malaria vaccines. So the context of the access to infrastructure in some rural areas was very bleak, but the clinicians and the nurses, they had access to a certain type of phones. And then once that was identified, then the question was, okay, can we leverage the types of technologies that they do have access to actually improve the service delivery of malaria vaccines in that example? And the project was very successful in reducing the number of rates of deaths due to the lack of vaccines in a certain given place. So not thinking about the technology only, I mean, to begin with, but rather about the problem. And then also thinking about the multiple folks that could be connected. It is not always about the ultimate user being like the resident of the individual. It may be about connecting institutions that then can provide services to them. So think about it in that broad way, I would say.
Great. Well, thanks so much, Oscar. And now that we have Teresa back, we're going to ask her a few questions as well. Teresa, please let us know, from Kamir in New York, would like to know, how do you gauge what's a cool idea versus something that is needed and will have an actual impact?
Thanks. Well, I think I may repeat a little bit of what Oscar just said, but I believe from a product standpoint, products get adopted by users when you solve a problem for them in a new or better way than it's being solved today. And so I always believe you start with a user and you start with a problem that is a priority for them to solve, that is not being solved well, or maybe not even being solved at all. I think the cool part comes in how you leverage technology to solve that problem. Are you using technology that maybe didn't exist before? Or are you innovating in a way that lets you solve solve that problem by combining different technologies, by new or combining data sets that let you solve that problem. To me, that's where the cool factor comes in, is how you solve the problem. But you have to start with the right users and a problem that they're really desperate to be solved.
Great, thanks. That's incredibly helpful. And lastly, we have another question from Esther in Chicago. She would like to know, being a woman in tech, what advice do you have for females pursuing computer science in college? And additionally, what should we be doing better to advance women in the coding world, and also to encourage them to, be better programmers, take advantage of various computer science opportunities, et cetera?
I think, something I learned early on in my career, when I did my undergrad at Carnegie Mellon, was I was one of a few women. And, in some ways it's gotten better, but we really haven't made the strides to match what the population of women is to men overall to where we are in technology. And I think one of the lessons I learned really early was that I was going to stand out because of my gender. I was going to stand out from the beginning. And rather than stand out from just my gender, I wanted to stand out by being really good at what I did. And so I really focused on the work. I focused on the finding opportunities that were a good fit for me, not necessarily opportunities that everyone wanted, and really understanding what I was good at. When you think about product development, there's a lot of different pieces and parts, and figuring out what you're good at, what makes you get up in the morning excited to go about your work, is really important. And then finding opportunities where the needs of an organization or a role really match your strengths, but also give you opportunities to further develop. I think being willing to take risk is something that I think especially women are not as willing to in general. I think that growing up as girls, we're told to be good girls and follow the rules, and that's where the rewards are. But I don't know that that's true in life. I think that I always sort of look at any sort of risk, any opportunity has risk. And when I look at that opportunity, I say, what's the worst case scenario? And could I live through that? What's the best case scenario? And know that reality is going to fall somewhere in between. And if the benefits are worth, maybe hitting that worst case scenario, then go for it. And so I think being willing to take risks, maybe being willing to have a career that doesn't, match ideals or roadmaps that you're given.
I think we may have lost Teresa a little bit to connectivity. So once again, as we can see, quite an inspiration, to all the women and girls watching to really, continue to pursue those dreams along the way. And lastly, we are going to take one more question that we'll actually ask Oscar to comment on here. It was actually live from our YouTube chat. So thanks for all who've been engaging with us in conversation throughout the duration of the program. Oscar, to what extent does COVID-19 present more opportunities for misuse of tech, which is according to what Viviana would like to know?
Thank you for that question, and that's very important. And I think we need to acknowledge that technology is not neutral, and that comes with a bunch. And using any type of technology to provide any given service comes with responsibility. So what that means is that we have to unfold where we think about applying technology, and identifying the places where the impact is going to be the highest, while also being compliant with everybody's human rights, right? So for instance, just to put a quick example that people might not be thinking about when they think about tech applications in the context of COVID-19, as governments need to put together their estimations, especially local governments, to buy equipment, they need to figure out, okay, what data sets should I be looking at to determine what is the needs that my community or my particular hospital or my set of hospitals that are under my administration are going to require. And so all this analysis of multiple variables that come from different places, combined with an ever-evolving ecosystem, forces governments to suddenly, really quickly, step up the strategies and tools to do things that they didn't do before. So that's a place where technology can be used to build the capacity of governments to actually follow up and deliver on the other projects that are literally, like, for instance, in this case, providing PPEs to hospitals and people that need them quickly. So when you think about tech and COVID, there's so many improvements that could be down to the operations of so many different city agencies working on a variety of issues, whether it is mental health, tenant protection, women's rights protection. So don't only think about it in the context of, say, an app that fulfills a particular purpose, because that has been, for instance, what people have been talking about in the context of contact tracing versus privacy. Think about it in the broader context of everything that a public administration needs to do, and you'll find that there's a lot of places for improvement with in a way that we are always respectful and compliant with human rights and law.
That's great, Oscar. Thank you so much. I know we do have Teresa back. So actually, Teresa, we'd like to ask you this question as well that we had from Viviana from the audience, because I think it'd be great to have the duality of both of your perspectives. So specifically, to what extent do you think COVID-19 presents more opportunities for potential misuse of tech?
I don't know if it presents more opportunities, but I think it's more obvious, right? And with such a faster sort of cycle time on the information we're seeing and how we're seeing it, right? We've seen stories about data scientists for, state governments quitting over being asked to change results. We've seen data being presented by states that was, whether willfully or not willfully, could lead to misinterpretation. I think some applications have taken off. Telemedicine, other applications that were lightly used have taken off. Zoom, for example, that we're all using, right? We know what's happened to that. And so I think in some ways it can be good in that, we've seen some of these getting more, folks getting more interested in finding security issues and getting those fixed because they're in the headlines. But I think to me, it's more so on the data. Is where I am very wary of, and I think we all as technologists have to be very vigilant about this. Technology is not inherently good or evil. It's all about how it's used and what the intent is. And so I think as technologists who help others implement technology, do data analysis, and all of this, our goal has to be to try and stick to the truth, to outline what assumptions we're making, be very transparent about assumptions we're making whenever we're leveraging or building technology, and speak the truth, because I feel like that's our responsibility as engineers. Just like civil engineers who build bridges need to make sure that the bridges, save people's lives. I feel like as technologists, we have a similar responsibility to the world.
That's great. Thank you, Teresa. And that actually really concludes our programming well, is that, we're really, once again, calling on all of you to help join us in this ecosystem effort around the world of helping ideally save lives, really, through, climate change as well as COVID-19, since we all know these issues are not going to be going away anytime soon, and would love to have you team up with us on this collective effort for the world. So thank you all once again for joining. We will be in touch with all of the presentations from today. So if you didn't grab a link here, there, rest assured you will be receiving all of the content, and we really look forward to having you along with us on the journey. So thank you so much, and have a wonderful rest of your day.